If you're watching this, I'm dead. This is a code black. This message was automatically triggered when I destroyed the cave and everything it contained.
This may sound crazy to a lot of people on the internet, but I actually really enjoyed my 30-hour journey with Gotham Knights, despite the mass criticism it's currently facing. Though it has MMO elements and a grind behind it, none of it felt forced upon me as I fought through the game's campaign, explored its visually diverse world, and undertook its abundance of side content. While there are a plethora of issues plaguing the title, and I'll definitely get to them later, the gameplay has nothing to do with it. I actually found Gotham Knights' gameplay loop to be addicting. Going out into the open world to partake in its variety of crimes, strongholds, and races kept me thoroughly engaged. New crime activities kept popping up as I progressed through the game, keeping it somewhat fresh, with the outlier being small crime scene investigations. These require you to scan a scene and piece together clues. They're pretty basic, and I found them overly boring. While the open world, which takes place in the dead of night, acts as a vessel for its missions and side content, it also feels somewhat alive. Unlike past Batman games, the soaked streets are populated with traffic and pedestrians that will go about their routines and even comment on your character like Sony's Spider-Man.
Lost our sponsorship because no one wants to be associated with Gotham. You're that vigilante I've heard about.
Take him out! That's Batgirl?
Gotham citizens can be found hurtled around burn barrels to keep warm from the gloomy weather, engaging in conversation on a park bench, or even taking group selfies during a night out. While these don't have a ton of depth, it adds to the overall cohesiveness of the world and helps you feel a little bit like you're making a difference. The story is definitely a highlight here. It's by no means original, but it takes fan favorite characters and puts them to good use. The plot is somewhat predictable with the cliche bigger, badder foes, but it has some surprising twists and great performances to back good writing.
Looks like you've been eating well. Still big as an ox and twice as mean.
Been a while, Harley. You good?
Without a doubt, the best part of the story for me wasn't the villain or the plot, but the four characters Knights focus around. Batgirl, Red Hood, Nightwing, and Robin are all playable and compelling in their own way. These four have to find their way in a world without Batman, and it's this personal journey that I fell in love with.
How's Alfred?
What you'd expect. Took him 3 years to agree to a vacation, and Bruce turned up dead. He asked for some time.
He knows none of us were there either, right?
These deeper looks into the characters and how they are handling the loss of their mentor are perhaps some of the best moments in the game, and a lot of them are optional. Red Hood struggles with his past death and the repercussions that it came with. Batgirl mourns the loss of her father as she tries to pick up pieces of his past and make him proud. Nightwing, being the most weathered of the bunch, attempts to fill Bruce's shoes as a leader, but he doesn't quite know how to approach the position. The adolescent Robin confronts the grief he lugs around for his former mentor. I really like that Warner Bros. Took a risk with this by having overly saturated characters completely out of the picture here. Having Batman, Gordon, and the Joker be absent for its entire runtime is refreshing, and that's coming from a guy who adores Batman. Though Bruce himself isn't involved in the present storyline, he makes a few appearances throughout the game's runtime, but is used to build up the grieving vigilante family that's trying to find its way without him. Gotham Knights has a lot of content on offer. Outside of the main story, players can access and progress through side stories called Case Files. These follow some of DC's more notorious and well-versed villains, like the devious Harley Quinn, the not-so-chilled Mr. Freeze, and the gooped-up Clayface. Each of these case files has a decent length, and they led to some really fun multi-phase boss fights. I mentioned before that its wide cast has variety. This offers an incentive to try each of them out. Batgirl is the healer of the bunch, with a special drone that heals in small doses. She's also nimble, but packs a punch with her grapple gun. Red Hood is the ranged character kicking ass with his somehow non-lethal dual pistols. I seriously have no idea how anyone's still alive after getting shot with these things. He also acts as a tank, dishing out some pretty heavy hits up close. Robin is the most flexible of the group, with flashy twirl moves and good crowd control abilities utilizing his staff. Last but not least is Nightwing. I honestly didn't play much of him because he didn't feel quite right. He's somewhere in the middle of all these characters. I just found his movement to be a little bit slow for my liking. The good news is players are able to main one character per run if they so choose. While I tried to keep everyone leveled up, I found that in the end I had the most fun with Red Hood and Batgirl. I also found them to be the most compelling out of the crew. The only downside to this is if you're like me and you want to keep everyone up to date, you will have to continuously swap between characters between patrols. You can't just swap whenever you want. You have to end the night, go back to the Belfry, and swap there. It's not a big deal, and like I said, there's a lot of content here for people to grind, but it really depends on the person whether they like this or not. It also does kind of suck because GTA did this like years ago where you could swap seamlessly between all three characters, and I don't know why you couldn't just do it here. Gameplay is without a doubt where almost all of the controversy surrounding this title stems from. Because of its MMO gameplay practices, many people have been put off. I understand this, but as someone who loved the recent Assassin's Creed Valhalla, this game felt a lot like that. I didn't have to spend hours grinding the same mission over and over. In fact, a majority of the patrols were rewarded with a great amount of progress in gear. I never felt forced to engage in any content I didn't want to. Gear and suits obtained through the gameplay and crafting will have unique stats and bonuses like resistance to certain elemental effects and elemental damage. Some effects will be better suited than others depending on what faction you're going up against. If you're fighting the Regulators, for instance, they base their attacks off ice damage, so it's best to use something opposite of that like fire. Every gear piece can be expanded upon by adding modifiers to it, but I gotta say I honestly just never touched this. I didn't feel a need to touch this because all the suits had some kind of elemental damage. The sheer amount of different crafting materials and modifiers you'll collect over its duration are confusing to say the least. I can't tell you what any of them are really used for despite me having way too many. Opening a chest to find a couple thousand crafting parts of one of the 20 different materials really did not faze me at all. Thankfully, I never had to pay much attention to this as I always had enough materials to craft whatever I was looking for, even if it is a little clunky. Speaking of clunky, the UI is pretty terrible. It's big and in your face, but somehow it manages to be a little complicated to navigate. There are tabs upon tabs, and it just does not flow well. I don't know if they just put this together a couple weeks before launch, but it could use some serious tweaking. Now, comparisons are inevitable in all facets of life, but I think comparing this game to Rocksteady's triple feat of Arkham games is just doing this game a huge disservice. Gotham Knights was never supposed to be like those games, and it's clear that Warner Bros. Wanted to deviate from that. Combat is much different here. Like, where Arkham relied on a combo and counter system, Gotham Knights puts a system called momentum at its core. This is about constantly moving around the battlefield, using special abilities, hitting perfect attacks, and dodging incoming blows to build a meter. So many people decided what they wanted before this game even came out, and it's a shame. Like I said, I have 30 hours in it, and I'll probably do a New Game Plus run. Oh yeah, and that leads me to that. This game has a New Game Plus at launch. You know, a feature that some games have to wait months for. Customization is plentiful here as well, and who doesn't love customization? Though it's often kind of ambiguous as to how to obtain color schemes and new suits, when you get them you'll find that each suit has 12 cosmetic options, 3 for the cowl, 3 for the boots, gloves, and emblem. It may not be the most robust or in-depth system, but it works and offers slight deviations to make these characters stand out. The bat cycle can also be customized by way of colors. That brings me to the 3 forms of traversal here. These are the grapple hook, the bat cycle, and each character's unique mode of travel that is unlocked later into the game. This is a huge gripe for me. I honestly think that it's a huge miss on Warner Bros. Part. Having to grind each character to get their traversal option is a bad design choice. With that said, I think the bat cycle is probably the best way to get around the city, which is followed by the grapple hook. The other options felt a bit underwhelming and slow, and that sucks because I didn't get their alternate travel until like halfway through the game. So I mentioned earlier that the game has some glaring issues, and that's when it comes to performance. First of all, I don't care that the game runs at 30 FPS. I'm not one of those 60 FPS people. However, I do care when the game dips below 30 occasionally. This only happened a handful of times during my 30 hours, but it's still an issue. I played this on Xbox Series S, and I had about 6 instances of the game just refusing to boot up. It kicked me right back to the dashboard. I don't know how to resolve this. I just kept going play, 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 and then it would finally boot up. Last but not least, I had 2 hard crashes during main missions. Those issues will inevitably be fixed over the coming weeks, but it is a shame to see it launch in this state. It's obviously nowhere near as bad as some other titles, but it's still insane, especially when it's a next-gen only game and it's launching like that. I'm not blaming people for passing this if it's due to the performance issues, but I see a lot of people hating on it that haven't even tried it yet, saying that like it's boring, the combat shallow, and I'm like, how can you come to that conclusion? You haven't played it for yourself and you watched a YouTube video. After a few patches, I really think people should give this game a shot. I know I'll be playing it for a while, and I'll be looking forward to new content in the future for it. I think they did a great job bringing a Bat Family adventure to life, even if it has its flaws. That's it for this video. Thank you all for watching.
You've always had my back when I needed you. I know you'll keep Gotham safe. Good luck. And goodbye.